2 and you are live.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. This is the first meeting of the Quality of Life and Infrastructure Committee. It's Monday, January 24th, 2022. And let's do a quick roll call here. Councilmember Risberger, I'm here. Councilmember Davies.
Here.
Councilmember Harrington. Can't hear you, Scott.
Yes, I couldn't get it off of mute now.
Oh. Additionally, we have Mayor Drenick listening in, our city administrator, Greg Mattice, and then we have two guests here, Catherine Pollock and Mike Forster Rothbart, both from the Environmental Board. So first of all, did everybody see the minutes from the last Infrastructure Committee meeting, or the Planning Committee meeting? And since I think what I would say is, if unless anybody has any objections, we just accept those minutes, since I know, Scott, you weren't on that committee. And we have two topics today. We have a creek naming proposal, and also deer in Oneonta. There's been a discussion that's been started about that. So let's start with the easy one, which is the creek naming proposal. And Mike, thank you for joining us. And I was hoping you could give us an update on where we are. I see on the proposal itself, has been done this fall, I believe, and what's coming this coming spring. So why don't you give us an update?
Yeah, and do you all have that document in front of you, or should I share it?
If you want to share it with us for the discussion, that's fine with me.
All right, let me just pull it up. One moment. This is the most recent version, yes. All right. Okay, so can you see that now?
Yes.
Yes.
So basically, I'll give a little background, because I know, Scott, you weren't familiar with this before. I'm not sure if anyone else is. Basically, it was an idea of the Environmental Board to do some environmental education with local students in the Oneonta City School District, and simultaneously raise awareness about some of the smaller geographic features in the city. And so the way we came up with doing that was to identify a number of creeks in the city that do not have names, and then work with students at all the different schools to generate names. And the official process is that the local unit of government needs to approve a name that comes forward from the community, and then that gets sent to the U.S. Geological Service, and then they can make it official after they do their due diligence. So that's the background. We have identified 5 creeks in the city of Oneonta, or actually 6 in the city of Oneonta, and a couple more that cross from the city to the town. We brought this to the planning committee and have talked with various city board members, council members about the project, and we've only heard positive things so far. We've talked about it informally with one town board member, and we are going to present to them on February 9th to get their formal approval with the process that we proposed, which is basically using some SUNY Oneonta students and working with teachers in the different schools to teach the kids some about the geography and the biology of these creeks. And then in the spring, we'll do a creek walk with kids from each school for their designated creek. And then the students and teachers will come up with a brainstorm of ideas for names And they'll have votes in the schools for their favorite names. It'll be up to the teachers to how much time they want to put into it. It could maybe anywhere from a few classroom hours to some teachers are really into it and plan to do more with it. But then basically those proposed names would come to the environmental board. The students would present to us, and then ultimately present to the city council and the town board to get you guys' hopefully approval for whatever they come up with. There are some rules that the USGS has as far as what is considered a viable name. It has, if it's named after a person, it has to be somebody who has a historic connection to that creek or to that geographical area. And it has to be someone who's been dead for a certain period of time. I forget the number of years. So we won't have an Obama Creek or anything like that. Or if we did, it wouldn't get approved by the USGS. So where we are as far as process, we've had meeting with teachers. So far we have specific teachers definitely signed on for middle school, for Greater Plains, and for Valley View. We're still identifying teachers for Riverside and for the high school who want to be involved. And we'll have another meeting with the teachers next month. Like I said, we'll also go to the town board in February. Then our goal is for the process, the educational component will mostly be March and April. April and May. And with the students coming up with names in May. And we're hoping that they would come to the environmental board in our June meeting, and then come to, or in our May meeting, and then come to you guys shortly thereafter with their nominated names. And the purpose was to help kids give both knowledge and ownership of these local watersheds, with the belief that if people name their geographic features and are connected to them, they'll be more interested in helping to protect them. So that's basically what I have to say. I'm open to any questions you guys have.
Mike, is there a deadline to getting this project done?
The only deadline, there's no official deadline. The only deadline is tied to the school year, is that we want to get it through to board approval before the end of the school year, just so that the kids feel like they have momentum and it doesn't linger till September. But as far as USGS is concerned, there's no timeline. They will review it whenever it comes to them.
Okay.
And they said that it usually then takes them a month or two to do their research and diligence and officially make it a name that'll appear on maps. So if the council approved it in June, it would probably be, towards the end of the summer before it became, federally approved legal name.
Anybody have any other questions at all?
No, I like the idea. I'm just like Mike, like you were talking before, I'm a little hesitant on names of people. Unless I like the idea if they were tied to the area. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
But no, I'm good with whatever you guys come up with. I think it's a good, and I really like that you guys are getting the schools involved in it. I think that's a great project, and I think they'll be really responsive with it.
Yeah, we'll talk with the students about sort of different ways that things get named. Sometimes they get named historically after somebody, if you think of some places in our area, hills and roads and so on, they're named after a family farm that was there a century ago. But also there are descriptive names. And so we'll encourage the kids to think about, what does it look like? What plants do they see growing there? How would they describe the creek? And, so we may end up with, Muddy Creek and things like that. And if that's what they want to name it, that would be fine with me. The other thing is it just seemed like a good non-political cooperative project with the town, because I know we've been talking about ways to build those relationships, and so hopefully when we go to meet with them next month, they'll be as supportive as you guys have been. And as a backup plan, I mean, part of the reason we want to do it with the town is also the creek that's most logically the creek for Greater Plains to use and the creek for Valley View to use are creeks that cross the border between the city and the town. But if for some reason the town did not want to be involved, we could rejigger things and just use creeks that are entirely within the city.
Mike, do you have, as far as Riverside goes, do you have a couple options for teachers? They just haven't decided yet, or have they asked and nobody seems to be willing or able?
Yeah, Melinda Murdoch, is that the right name of the principal over there?
Yes.
She put a request out to the teachers, and nobody has stepped forward yet. So we need to ask around a little bit more. In the other schools, there were sort of eager teachers who were eager to participate. Eagerly raise their hands to participate. If you have ideas from your work with the schools of people we could approach, that would be welcome.
Well, I'm in that building often, so I can touch base with Melinda to see how things are going. Each building is just, the dynamics are just so different. I'm not surprised that you've got some of them that jumped on, and some are just not able to commit just yet. It's just, they're so just different in each of those buildings. So I'm not in the high school though, so that would be a little bit outside of what I can help with. But
That's
I'll
fine.
touch base.
The principal there is looking into it, and we have at the high school we have a number of teachers who are interested. It's a matter of figuring out what fits into people's schedules and
Gotcha.
their whatever they're teaching, for their regents' responsibilities and so on.
Right.
Yeah, but so at Greater Plains it'll be 2 5th grade classrooms. At Valley View it'll be 3 2nd grade classrooms. At the middle school it'll be several of the science teachers, and the other 2 schools, like I said, we're still working out.
Okay. Does anybody have any other questions for Mike?
Dave, I don't
Mark,
have a
go ahead.
question, just a quick comment. I think I certainly really appreciate this project. A lot of times environmental awareness is about kind of reacting to these big issues, right? Climate change and things like this, which can be really daunting for young, for young people. I think this project takes a different tack to try to create a little bit more environmental awareness, which is getting to have a little bit more of appreciation for their place and appreciation by naming it and taking that step further. So I really appreciate this project. I think it does a nice job at promoting environmental awareness amongst our school children. So thanks to Mike. I know you've been behind the effort, you and Paul, and the environmental board, the whole environmental board as well.
Yeah, and I just want to say Paul couldn't be here today, but he's been instrumental as well, and he works at SUNY Oneonta, and it will be his education students who will be volunteering in the schools to doing some of these lessons.
Sounds great. Well,
All right.
we look forward to seeing, hopefully we'll have all the schools on board the next time we talk, and I look forward to seeing where this goes in the spring.
Yeah, I look forward to it too. Thank you guys for your interest, and I'll stick around to support Kathy if there are any questions that she can't answer. I'll be happy to jump back in.
Sure, sounds good. If you could unshare your the document, that would be great. Or can I do that? Okay, there we go. All right. So the next item came to us indirectly through Catherine and Greg Mattice, and regarding the deer in Center City. And I know that this hasn't really been on the docket for a serious discussion in not since I think John Nader was running for mayor. I remember there were some discussions back then about what to do about the number of deer in Center City, and at that point, I think I was told that the normal quantity of deer per square mile was something like 4, and Oneonta was well past that. But I'm not entirely sure if that number was accurate or what the accurate number really is. I do know that we have a lot of deer, and on any given day at the top of Maple Street, you can see about a dozen of them at the main street or the State Street apartments there. So, Catherine, do you want to just bring everybody up to speed on the letter that you sent to Greg, and we'll take it from there.
Yes, and Mike, thanks for sticking around to help me with this. As we've already found in our discussions with the board, this is a pretty controversial subject. I think I need to start by just admitting that I'm the one that brought this up because of my own personal involvement with the situation. I live on Spruce Street between Clinton and Brook. And in the 32 years I've lived here, we've gone from having very few deer to having herds of deer every single day go through our neighborhoods. A few nights ago, there were 8 deer that went down Spruce, turned right on Brook, heading towards Center Street, just as an example. And we all know that we've seen him throughout the center city. And what has happened is that many of us have issues with what the deer eat in our yards. My backyard personally has been increasingly constantly filled with deer droppings. And probably the final straw for me was a few weeks ago when we woke up to find a deer tangled in our son's soccer goal, had been there for several hours, and we had to have the police come to release it. So there's a lot of, well, anyway, enough about my own personal issues. Let me tell you where we've gone with this. I brought it up to the board to see if we wanted to pursue it at all. The question is, do we have a problem? How do we know if we have a problem? What are the issues? And the issues, as we've come to know, is first of all, damage to property, any deer car incidences. I think many people around here have had that, not necessarily in the city, but certainly we're all aware of that. There's also the increased presence of tick-borne diseases that the deer carry that can affect both human and pets. So I have done some research trying to find out how do we determine the problem and what are the solutions. And along that line, I contacted Celinda Brandon at the DEC, who will be available at our next environmental board meeting to discuss this further and to answer any questions we have. She gave me a very thorough link, or a link to a very thorough website, I should say, that Cornell Cooperative Extension has put out about community deer management. We are obviously not the only community to have this problem. There are many communities before us who have gone through this and who have come to certain ways of handling things. If you want me to give you that, I certainly will. We've been trying to explore a little bit. Kevin Schultz looked up some statistics. He tried to find some. As far as Lyme in the county, we have about 100 out of 100,000 population for Lyme disease. He tried to find some information on car deer accidents, and he found 26 animal-caused accidents in the city, and that was animal. I'm not sure if that was just deer. One of the things that Mike brought up too was the issue of, are there other animals that cause problems in the city? So finding out.
Was that the 26 animal causes? Was that in 1 year, or just?
Yeah, that was in 2020, and in 2020, my note, just 2021, there've been 11.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I'm trying to condense this as much as I can. So I think there are two issues right now, and one is how do we determine whether we need to move forward with anything? And I think one of the things that I have brought up is there some way for us to do a survey of community members to find out, how they look at this? Is there a concern? If there's a concern, is there enough concern for the city to do anything about it? And I can use some advice and some help about how to conduct that kind of a survey. And then just looking at the possible solutions, which I'll just say right off the bat can be problematic. They can be expensive. They could be controversial. There's not an easy answer to the solution or to the problem. So we're just at that point, I feel, of exploring it to decide if there's value in going forward, if there's enough interest in going forward to do anything more. So I'd be interested in your feedback. I want to say one other thing. One of the things that I found out in talking to Celinda at the DEC, I did not know this, but feeding deer is illegal. You can get a ticket for feeding deer. And I know that some people in the city do this, which only contributes to bringing them in. The other thing is that she said it's very harmful to the deer themselves to be fed. It changes their natural patterns and so forth.
That's
So
actually what's happening up on Normal Avenue at the apartment complex. There's somebody that takes food every day and throws it off their balcony, and that's why there's I've witnessed it once and I wasn't sure what I was seeing, and that's why there's a herd that's slowly growing
yes.
at the top of Maple Street.
Well, and as I said, it's a ticketable offense.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's the city that does that or if it's the DEC, but it is illegal. Maybe getting that word out would be good. So anyway, that's where we are. I would really appreciate any feedback from you all as far as your sense of the issue, whether you feel like there's any point in the city moving forward with this. I mean, obviously, if I can do all the research, we can discuss it, but it's going to end up with the Common Council at some point.
Let me just jump in for a sec. Kathy, that was a great summary. But so basically the two questions that we were struggling with on the committee were, is this just a nuisance that people can deal with, or is this a priority problem that needs to be addressed? Was one thing that we discussed and had some disagreement about. And the second is, can we address this problem through education, getting out information about not feeding deer, about deer resistant plants, that sort of thing? Or is it an enforcement issue, or is it something that actually requires active intervention?
Thank you, Mike.
Well, from what I do remember, I'll jump in here. Years ago, John Nader did put out information to the public on deer-resistant plants. And it just appears to me, just without doing any research, is that once you have the deer in the city and they know where to go for food, they're going to eat whatever plants they see. And we've also come across, at least in my neighborhood, that if they're hungry enough, they will eat deer-resistant plants.
Yes.
Because we've had plants that were deer-resistant that lasted for years and then were just decimated in the span of a month over a summer. I do agree that this is very controversial, but it's also not unique to Oneonta. It's become a bigger and bigger problem across the United States and in cities. Most of the time you hear about it due to expansion of cities into the forest and there in the where the deer live. But of course, unfortunately that's not an issue here in Oneonta. There hasn't been much growth here. So I think we can go back to the education. I have a feeling it's going to only go so far. But I think maybe what we need to do is, and whether this is a priority problem or a nuisance, I think it's all in the eye of the beholder, whether it's a nuisance or not. I think, in my opinion, I think a survey is great. I don't know that I would want to put a survey out on what people think we should do about it yet. But I think having help on what kind of a survey would be helpful for us. But I think the first thing we need to do is identify, like, is this a really a problem or not? And I think I think it's great that Celinda Brandon is coming to speak to the environmental board. I think it would be very helpful to have any information that she provides provided to either this committee or the entire council, so we know what's out there and what's being said and what's being studied, and whether this is a real, like, what kind of a problem is it in other communities. So
May I give you the link to this deer management site?
yeah,
Really it's got so much information. I haven't even looked at all of it. So
yeah, if you could send that to all of our emails,
oh, okay.
that would probably be the easiest thing.
Okay, I could give it to you right now, but just rather send it.
Is it an easy? It's not a long one then, I'm assuming. So
Well,
go ahead.
so the first part is Deer Advisor, all one word, DERRADVISOR
Okay.
.NR .cornell.edu.
So deeradvisor.nr
I'm sorry, .DNR.
DNR.
D is in
Got
dog.
it.
Yeah.
Cornell.edu.
Yeah. It has all kinds of information about how to set up a deer management program, and it gives a number of cities that have done deer management and what has worked or not worked for them. It does give some examples of surveys. It's very informative.
Before I open it up for questions, can I have you, one of the things that you mentioned in your email, I believe, was what Syracuse is doing.
Yeah.
And did you want to review quickly what Syracuse is doing and why it came to what their decision was?
I don't know a lot about it. I just
Okay.
know that their course of action has been to bring in sharpshooters from the USDA who shoot the deer, and then they also they donate the meat to local food pantries.
But that was, they trapped them in a certain area and then they shot them, from what I read.
Well, maybe I didn't look that deeply into it.
Okay, I looked it up online, what they were doing, and it looked like,
One of the
rather than going through the neighborhoods, which is obviously dangerous.
No, you don't want to do that. One of the ideas that's been put out has been to expand where people can hunt. So, properties closer into the city, perhaps, or getting people who have private properties to allow hunting and to allow more extensive hunting. That's and I was told that has happened out near the Wilbur Reservoir. That area around there has been opened up to hunting in a way to cut back on the deer there.
Okay. I'm going to open this up to any other questions here from anybody. Scott, Mark, go ahead.
So not a question as much as a comment. It seems like, and with respect to Mike, your point, it seems like we could easily separate out the educational piece about not feeding the deer from this entire issue. And that's something I think would be rather easy that the city can address. We can put it in our Facebook page. We can send out a nixle. There's many ways that we can at least get the word started that feeding the deer is a problem. The other issue is all the questions that were asked, is that we need to certainly start to study those. But I think we could easily kind of get at that once. So if I could propose that we separate that out.
Mm-hmm. I think because the Environmental Board now has a Facebook page, we can certainly put something on that. That would be one way to get some information out. Does anybody have any other ideas?
Well, I
I'm
think
sure
Go
oh,
ahead,
sorry.
Scott.
I was just saying, I like when Mark was saying, and like Dave, I think where you were going with, like with Nixle and stuff like that. the newspapers and media outlets. I think if we can get to them and say, hey, this is starting to become a concern, you know, just a reminder, friendly reminder, don't feed the deer, don't, you know, what needs to be done there. I got to kind of defer to the two that are on here. They're more center city than me, because I'm in the 6th ward. So, I mean, deer in our area is kind of expected going up and down. It could be a problem in the 6th ward. I honestly, I don't know. But I can see where it's very problematic for the people in center city where the houses are on top of each other, because I'm not really sure you can get any kind of sharpshooter in from the USDA for the center city. So I think that idea is kind of out. It ain't going to happen.
Well, what
But maybe if we can get the word out and stuff like that would be the first step into a longer plan.
Yeah, what Syracuse did, Scott, just so we don't have this, since this is being a recorded meeting, and I don't want people to get the wrong idea here, deer here. No pun intended. But in Syracuse, what they did, there were 3 points around the city that they were away from any residential area. They had baited areas, and then once the deer were there, that's where the hunters came in, and they weren't just anybody. They were hired specifically by the DEC. That these people knew exactly what they were doing. So, not to say that we're doing that or not doing that. It would be a little bit more looking at the geography around here and who owns what land. It would be a little bit more difficult for the city, but anyway, that's what Syracuse did. So.
I also would like to hear what DEC has to say. I'm sure that they've run into this problem quite a bit, and probably are. I mean, I'm sure it's not just an Oneonta problem. I'm sure it's been, besides Syracuse like that, but I think it's probably pretty much all over upstate New York.
Well, I'd also like to know, like, what are the estimated numbers within the city? What's a normal acceptable amount in typical cities? And at one level, historically, do you get to when you start having a lot more problems, whether it's accidents or tick-borne illnesses and so on and so on and so on? Because you know, with any kind of overpopulation, there's problems that are associated with that. So I agree, Scott. I think there's a lot of questions that the DEC could answer for us.
Yeah, I'm not sure how we go about counting the deer. I read with one city, people actually drove around at night with headlights trying to find them, but I'm not sure how we count the deer. I can tell you how many go down my street every day.
Well, I think the DEC could help us out with that. They may already have these answers. I don't think we should be trying to reinvent the wheel here, and I would let them lead the way here. So did you said that she's speaking at the next environmental board meeting, which is which day?
February 8th.
February 8th. Okay.
Tuesday it's at 7. I don't know. She's going to be remote. I don't know if we're going to be in person or not. But she comes from Stanford. So I think I was told that there's a way to get her to be a part of the meeting as remotely.
And Mark will be at that meeting, so Mark Davies, so he'll keep us informed. Does anybody have any other questions here for Catherine? Okay. Well, go ahead, Catherine.
Yeah. Do you want me to come back to you at some point about, well, certainly following that meeting, but about where?
Well, I think it would be good. I think it would be good to have this put on our agenda for next month, and that way we can have another discussion based on what the environmental board hears from Ms. Brandon, and we go from there.
Okay. Thank you.
All
Oh,
right.
I do have one. When you mentioned going to the newspaper, who would do that? I don't know. I'm not sure I have the right to bring this to the newspaper, or do I?
Well, the newspaper's not going to do it for free, I don't believe. But I think sending out a Nixle message is easy, and posting it on the environmental board page, Facebook page, is fairly easy. And then it's every council member has access to people in their own wards, and we could get the word out. I think it's you asked a good question though, as far as ticketing goes. Who's responsible for ticketing? Is it the DEC, or is it OPD, or is it the code office? Because it's clear in our city charter that you're not allowed to feed wildlife. Of course, the $1 million question is, or not question, but you have to catch somebody doing it.
Mhm.
That's the hard part. So, but that's something that we could talk with, follow up with our code office. They might have that answer for us. It could be that either or can do the ticketing.
All right. Well, thank you for listening.
I would just jump in about, and as far as ticketing, as far as education versus enforcement, I think, it makes sense to start by getting the word out as much as we can. And certainly the environmental board put some message out that then can go out on Nixle. But, I would think preliminary enforcement, you'd want to try to do education, not just go around ticketing people, but, let people know
Right,
we
of
see
course.
you have a scrap heap of food that you've been throwing off your porch, just so you know that that's not legal, and we are
Right.
starting to enforce it.
Absolutely.
The other thing, when I said the paper, a lot of times if you, I don't know who our reporter is. I know the one time when we had an issue, we just reached out to them and asked them if they could write an article on it. And a lot of times, they will write an article if you reach out to them and say, hey, this is what we're experiencing. And maybe that's another thing, if you want to say, hey, reach out to us at the environmental board. Are you having issues or something like that with this? And, that would be, depends how involved you really want to get and how much email you want to get coming your way. That's the other issue because,
Yeah, you could send out an invite to the Zoom meeting to the newspaper to see if they want to cover it.
Yep.
Tell them why and who is going to be speaking.
I can do that.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay.
Or you can, or Karen can.
Yeah.
And just so you all know, I do some work for the Daily Star with my other hat as a photojournalist. So I can help communicate that message as well.
Great.
It was very interesting that after our last meeting, then almost the very next day, there was a big picture in the paper of the deer eating bushes on East Street.
Now,
Got one. I'm
does the
sorry.
environmental board want to set up, issue a statement through Nixle? If you want to do that, that could be submitted to our city clerk, and she could send that out to everybody in the community that's enrolled in Nixle.
All right. I think we'll have to go back to the board next meeting and ask, see if there's a consensus about that.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you very much for expressing an interest in this.
Thank you. And we'll put this on the agenda for next month also. Scott and Mark, do you have anything you want to add?
about this issue or a different issue?
Well, this issue first.
Okay. No, I think
The only thing I would add is that this resource, I've been rolling through the website, the Cornell website, and it's a very good resource. So there may be some reading that might generate some actions once you've had an opportunity to take a look at it.
Sounds good. All right.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you. Scott and Mark, do you have anything else you want to add or bring up?
just a question for Greg. I'm assuming it would be part of this committee is I know for a couple years now we've been talking about parking studies, and I know we brought up some issues like down in the 6th ward, and there's been other issues within the city. Do you know or have a plan or tentative date of when you're going to get the parking study being able to be sorry, I'm wording it all wrong, but a start date for the parking study?
Yeah, we've already started reviewing that to some extent. I haven't really convened the full team within the city yet, but I think I'll do that probably pretty soon within the next month to start talking about it. I've been kind of doing some research on my own, reading up on what other cities do with respect to snow emergency parking and other things. I think what we'll eventually do is go street by street through the city and review each of the parking regulations and also looking at the overall plan. So as far as a deadline or a date, I don't have anything set in my mind at this moment, but certainly in advance of the 2023 budgeting process, I would expect we would have something put together and have gone through discussions at this committee, I'm assuming, and possibly the finance committee, looking ahead at, possibly implementing some measures that would cost money. So we would obviously want to budget for those in 2023. So tentatively this summer, I would say, is our goal to have something under discussion at this committee in finance.
And is that you thinking paid parking as well or something like that, or is it just?
Yeah, absolutely. We're looking at paid parking downtown as to how that could be implemented, what would make sense, what other places are doing, and how it might work here. So,
Okay.
Craig, who are you going to be consulting with about the parking?
Well, internally, various staff members, certainly police and fire and DPW, finance, we all need to kind of have discussions about that. I didn't know what committee you might want to have that discussion led by. If it's this committee.
This would be the
Yeah.
committee.
Okay. So I think we'll put our heads together as staff first, kind of come up with some ideas and then bring that to this committee for discussion.
Sounds good. Scott, do you have any other questions about parking?
Nope. That was just it. And I wasn't sure if this was the right place to bring it up. So I apologize.
No apology necessary. This is where you bring it up. Anybody have anything else? I don't believe there's any executive session, so I think that's it. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.